Who said defense was boring? The Edmonton Oilers went into Vegas with a defense-first mindset, shut the door, won in overtime, and they're going to the conference final for the third time in the last 4 years. And on today's edition of Locked On Oilers, I'm going to tell you why Oilers head coach Kris Knoblauch has the magic touch and why the Oilers are in great shape going forward.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Victory Thursday, second round of the playoffs, Victory Thursday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. This is my second Stanley Cup playoff run as host of Locked On Oilers, my third NHL season with the Locked On Podcast Network, my 10th NHL season doing hockey content. I couldn't be more happy to be here. I couldn't be more happy to have you here on the day the Oilers advance to the conference finals. Again, before we get to today's jam-packed edition of Locked On Oilers, I want to thank everyone that's making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we've got your team covered every day. And today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, where right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So on today's edition of Locked On Oilers, we are going to walk through the game from a variety of stages. I stumbled over my words there. I'm a little bit excited. I bit my lip a little too hard celebrating when Kapanen scored, and I'm bleeding a little bit on the inside of my mouth, but the show must go on. To start things out, we are going to talk about the game in the macro, the big picture, why this was a 0-0 game by the end of regulation, the choices Kris Knoblauch made as far as the lineup that I thought were very interesting, and told you what he thought Vegas was going to do. In our second segment, we're going to pivot to talking about the low event nature of the game, why that really wasn't in Vegas's favor all that much, even though Vegas played a pretty good game as far as game control, possession, dangerous chances go. And then the final segment, I'm going to explain why the Oilers are in such good shape. So, to start things out, you know this is an elimination game. And as much as I get on the talking heads, the people who are on the intermission reports, the color commentators, the between the benches reporter, sometimes the cliches, the dogma that gets repeated over and over and over again, sometimes there's a glimmer of truth in there. And when those people tell you the hardest win is the fourth one, they know what they're talking about. And the choices Kris Knoblauch made in this game that put the Oilers in a position to win were not the most obvious, and they were not necessarily choices that I think suit his team. But the fact that the Oilers were able to adapt in the way they were in this game in relation to how they played in the playoffs at large, and more specifically this series against Vegas, this was a rock fight. This was, frankly, coming into the series, what I expected the series to be. And hand up, I picked Vegas to win the series in 7 games because I thought it would be 7 games of this. I thought it would be 7 games of 2-1, 1-0, 3-2, where Vegas having slightly better defense and slightly better goaltending would be the difference. And couldn't be happier to be wrong, frankly. I'm very glad I was wrong, and the Oilers did prove me wrong by playing a few different types of hockey throughout the course of this series. And tonight, Kris Knoblauch put a lineup together with the mindset of, we are going to match what Vegas does. We are going to bend, but we're not going to break. We're going to play no doubles defense. We're going to sit in a cover 2 look. So, excuse me here as I talk a little bit of football X's and O's, but one of the real revelations of the last few seasons in the NFL has been the proliferation and distribution of 2 high looks, meaning 2 safeties on the back end of the defense. And the idea of those guys is they're going to keep everything in front of them, that you're not going to beat them over the top. And in doing that, it has invited offenses to throw underneath more, shorter passes that get the ball out quicker from the quarterback's hands. And then those guys with the ball make plays out on the perimeter. And By doing this, defenses are trying to increase the number of variables in a given game. They are trying to increase the number of plays in hopes that they will tire out the offense or force the offense into making a mistake. And one of the original ways teams tried to stop these high-powered offenses with Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Tua Tagovailoa even fits in this conversation, Justin Herbert, as far as moving the ball and explosive plays. The first thing they tried to do was not give them the ball at all. And that's what Vegas tried to do tonight. The way teams were playing the Chiefs, the Bills, the Bengals, we're going to run the ball. We're going to keep the clock moving. You're not getting your best players out on the field. And we are going to shorten the game. We are going to make each and every one of these plays more valuable because there are fewer total plays in the game. And that was the Vegas approach tonight. Low event hockey and hoping that their star players would be able to make plays on a handful of sequences, and that would be able to swing the game. And credit to Vegas for coming out with what I would describe as a unique game plan. And I say it's unique in the respect that we're shifting away from this. In all of sports, we're shifting away from the idea of trying to win with defense because it's more difficult. We know if you put an emphasis on chance creation, regardless, or just offense creation, I should say, because you're not scoring points or goals in every game, you are trying to outscore your opponent. It is easier to outscore your opponent when your emphasis is on offense and you're not as caught up with trying to be perfect defensively. And Vegas, to their credit, played a great game tonight. I thought the penalty killing Vegas did on Edmonton was outstanding. They did not score a power play goal in this series on the road. The Oilers have yet to score a power play goal on the road through 2 playoff series now, which is crazy to say out loud, but they are finding a way to win these games at 5-on-5, and it speaks to the resilience of the team. And I'm going to talk about the lineup decisions Kris Knoblauch made to withstand what he saw coming from Vegas, and frankly, he read the room perfectly, and I have so much respect for Kris Knoblauch's understanding of his guys. And we're going to talk about that in a second, so I don't want to step on my own toes here. But to tie a bow on this opening segment, this is the type of game that in the regular season, the Oilers find a way to lose. If you'll recall, these two teams played a 1-0 game in the regular season where the Oilers were on the other side of it, where Evan Bouchard went down to Snow Angel to break up a 2-on-1. The puck went underneath him. It changed direction as it went underneath him, and Skinner was going post to post to try and make the save, and it didn't because it got stopped by Bouchard, but it had enough momentum to go into the net. And the Oilers lost that game 1-0 on a night where they couldn't get pucks to the middle. Vegas clogged the center lanes of the ice. There were no flanks for one-timers. There were no passing lanes to get that pass across from side to side to try and get Adin Hill moving. Tonight, there wasn't a whole lot of room out there. I give a lot of credit to Adin Hill bouncing back for a really poor Game 4, in all honesty, and he played great tonight. The Oilers had quite a few chances on breakaways off of rushes, and I think that's the hint. When you're playing a team like Vegas that is trying to actively slow the game down, that is trying to play a heavy cycle game, it's going to force you to create off of the rush more. And coming up next on today's edition of Locked On Oilers, I'm going to explain why the lineup changes Kris Knoblauch made worked so well in this game and why the Oilers are moving on to the conference finals. Be sure to stick around to this edition of Locked On Oilers, where we've got your team covered every day. The NBA and NHL playoffs are in full swing, and every single night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or an overtime game-winning goal, there has never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and puck drop and after the game starts. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. If you think the Stars are going to advance tomorrow night against the Jets, I should say tonight, I'm recording this well after midnight on the East Coast where I'm based. If you think the Stars are going to win tonight, we're going to get a Western Conference Finals rematch. You could pick the Stars. You could pick Mikko Rantanen to score a goal or over goals and assists combined. If you're over inclined in basketball, you could do something with Nikola Jokic with points, rebounds, assists combined. FanDuel has so many different ways to get in on the fun. And with $200 in bonus bets, if your first $5 bet wins, there has never been a better time to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this victory second round of the playoffs Thursday edition. I almost forgot what day of the week it was. I am tired. Don't mind me. Edition of Locked On Oilers. And I said it in the hit I gave to the Locked On NHL Game Night guys who do the show right after the games go final. Kris Knoblauch, he's got the magic fairy dust. This is 2 straight playoff runs now where he has found the exact right buttons to push at the exact right time for more than one player. We all know what happened last year in that Vancouver series where the Oilers went to Pickard. They were down 3-2. They went back to Skinner, and Skinner was great in 6 and 7, and he outplayed Jake Ottinger in the conference final. And Skinner was fine in the Stanley Cup final. Don't let revisionist history get to you. He was fine. He wasn't great. He wasn't very good. He was fine. He wasn't the problem. He wasn't the reason they lost. You think about some of the other lineup decisions they made last year. Inserting Dylan Holloway coming off of the really serious knee injury, scratching Warren Fogle at times, scratching Corey Perry at times, scratching Vincent Desharnais, bringing Philip Broberg in, playing Philip Broberg in on his offside last year, all hunches that work. And then you think about how this year's gone, where, first of all, you had Skinner lose those first 2 games against LA. You go to Pickard, you rattle off 6 in a row, you're going back home, you're up 2 games to none, in the second round series. But Pickard is hurt in game number 2. So you have to pivot to Skinner. Skinner loses in the most agonizing way imaginable. I could not think of a more agonizing way to lose game 3 than having the puck go in with 0.4 of a second left because Skinner overcommitted trying to play an angle to break up a pass. And you can't go back to Calvin Pickard. I don't know why I almost said Aiden Hill twice. Don't mind me. I'm tired. You had to ride it out with Skinner. It was Skinner or Olivier Rodrigue. And Skinner answered the bell. The way he played in game 4 and in game 5, if you're Kris Knoblauch, you have to feel like a genius right now. You have to feel like the gif of Jerry Seinfeld with the cigar in his mouth while Elaine counts out $100 bills on the living room table. How'd you get it right twice? And then the guy scratches Victor Arvidsson, who was a marquee free agent signing. The Oilers are paying Victor Arvidsson a non-insignificant amount of money. He is under contract to be on the team next year. And they sat Victor Arvidsson for Kasperi Kapanen, who they claimed off of waivers because they had 10 healthy forwards the day Kasperi Kapanen got put on waivers by the St. Louis Blues. And it worked. Kapanen scored the overtime game-winning goal to advance them to the conference finals. Kris Knoblauch has continued to push the right buttons. And one of the things I thought that would work against the Oilers at some point in the playoffs was the fact that Knoblauch kept getting things right last year. I figured at some point it would start to even out. The ledger would start to even out. And maybe he does have fairy dust because these lineup decisions keep working out. We haven't even talked about how he changed the line combinations that got me to write like a 3,000-word Substack article yesterday. If you didn't get a chance to check it out, I do highly encourage you to read my more long-form stuff. It's a little more in-depth and detailed, and if you really like to peel back the game layer by layer, my written stuff is really going to give you some meat on the bone to sink your teeth into. But I argued the reason the Oilers have played so well in these playoffs is for their best games, both against Vegas and LA, they were able to roll 4 lines, and all 4 lines didn't play the exact same way. you had your really high-end McDavid, Draisaitl, Perry line, where McDavid and Draisaitl create zone entries with their foot speed, or in Leon's case, more his deking and his ability to manipulate his body through space. And that opens up space for Corey Perry to be a menace around the net front. Corey Perry, who's shooting 42% in this series coming into tonight's games. That's your first line. Then your second line had been Zach Hyman, Evander Kane, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. A little bit slower, a little bit more of a heavy cycle-based game. So you have a zone entry, speed, rush team, a line, excuse me. You have a slog it down, slow it down, second line to play heavy below the goal line and try and jam pucks at the net, especially from Kane and Hyman, who are two of the better net front forwards in the entire league. Then you get to your Adam Henrique, Janmark, and Connor Brown line, Trent Frederic line before tonight. And that was getting some of the tougher defensive assignments. They would get the defensive zone faceoffs. They would be out there against Vegas's best players when they had last change and had the advantage of being able to match and try and get McDavid away from Jack Eichel, Draisaitl away from Jack Eichel. And then the fourth line had also had really good results when you're talking about what you had gotten out of Janmark and the rest of them. So tonight, Kris Knoblauch changed what was working. Got away from Connor and Leon together. We went back to a lineup you would have seen back in like November, December, if Evander Kane and Trent Frederic were available back then. You went back to old reliable. You know, you think about SpongeBob breaking open the jellyfishing net, old reliable. You went back to McDavid, Hyman, Nugent-Hopkins with Nugent-Hopkins on the wing. You went back to Leon, Podkolzin, and Kasperi Kapanen. You broke out something we hadn't really seen in the regular season, obviously, because he was hurt, but Adam Henrique, Evander Kane, and Connor Brown. And then the fourth line of Trent Frederic, Corey Perry, and Matthias Janmark. The Oilers juggled their lines, which dominated game number 4. And generally, when teams win, we know NHL coaches hate to make lineup changes. I mean, it took Kris Knoblauch as long as it did to get Stetcher back in the lineup because he didn't want to mess up the vibes after winning 6 games in a row, frankly. And sometimes I think that's dumb, that coaches don't want to change up the energy and they risk leaving talented players or more situationally convenient players out of the lineup to avoid messing up the vibe as opposed to trying to dress the best lineup possible. But if Kris Knoblauch really does have angel dust, maybe it doesn't really matter if we talk about if he's lucky or not. If he keeps getting them right, eventually you have to say he's a good coach. It's not just he's getting lucky or the Oilers are a good team. If you continually make the right choices on the margins, I mean, we're talking about Kapanen and Arvidsson, who play like 11, 12 minutes a night for the most part in the playoffs. And those are the guys that he feels he can get something more out of. And tonight, to mitigate what we talked about in that first segment, the idea of Vegas trying to play a desperate, heavy, slow it down, cycle it, try and break you, the Oilers went to a more defense-first lineup. They distributed their offense a little more evenly throughout their forward lines. They gave Leon his 2 preferred defensive wingers in Podkolzin and Kapanen, and they wanted Eichel to match up with Leon and that line to create some room for McDavid away from them. And we do have to talk about, and we will in the final segment, talk about McDavid possibly getting hurt during the course of this game when he wiped out going hard on that back check, which was a really breakneck effort to make it happen. And you give him a lot of credit for showing the intensity and, frankly, showing the accountability to know, oh, I need to get back. Someone messed up. It might have been me. Even if it's not me, I got to be there. But you got a really, really good performance out of the Oilers tonight. Stuart Skinner was great. Stuart Skinner deserves a lot of credit for answering the bell the way he has the last 2 games. And we'll see how long the magic carpet ride lasts. We know that goalies get hot. That's one of the real weird components of the position is it is prone to extremely hot runs. It is prone to extremely cold runs. And it's not out of the question Skinner can recapture some of his magic from last year. We know he's a confidence and momentum goalie. So if he plays well, it's not out of the question he can keep building himself up there and keep making things happen for himself. But we are going to take one more break on today's edition of Locked On Oilers, where you've got your team covered every day. And when we come back, I'm going to tell you why I think the Oilers are in great position to go back to the Stanley Cup. I'm whispering because I'm nervous to admit that. See you guys in a second. thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Victory Thursday of Game 5, the clincher of the second round series against the Vegas Golden Knights. And real quick, before we talk about projecting going forward, I do want to take accountability. I was wrong. I picked Vegas to win the series, and I want to walk through what happened real quick that I didn't think was going to happen. Number one, Vegas' stars went cold. And some of that, you absolutely give the Oilers credit for their defensive effort. You give the Oilers so much credit for their defensive effort, especially in games 4 and 5, where they were absolutely lights out. The Oilers defense, without Matthias Ekholm, mind you, played at a level I didn't think they would be able to. I think Vegas' defense, in particular, Alex Pietrangelo being dinged up, limited their ceiling. And then when the chips were down, Stuart Skinner answered the bell. Stuart Skinner outplayed Adin Hill the last 2 games. It's not something I expected was going to happen, especially when you think about where we were when we started this series with Pickard and net, and the conjecture being, oh God, could you imagine if they put Stuart Skinner back in there? That's where we were a week and a half ago before this series started. And now you sit here and you're starting to nod your head a little bit and think, we beat Dallas once. We can do it again. And look, we got a little while. We got to see what happens in that Jet Stars series. I am hopeful that that series will go another game or two because, as we talked about at the end of that second segment, McDavid wiped out pretty hard into the boards. He was really slow to get up. They had to open the door for him on the bench to get into the bench. And if McDavid cannot create his dynamic zone entries, he still has value as just a playmaker. But this Oilers penalty kill is really having a hard time. This Oilers power play right now is having a really hard time. And is it possible this is McDavid hitting more of a physical, like, energy wall as opposed to an injury suffered in the specific sequence? Yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility. A guy who's been playing 23, 24 minutes a night for a month now is starting to feel it a little bit. But I think more than anything, a little bit of rest would do everyone good. And look, rest versus rust is a real debate. I do think it matters on some level, depending on the sport. I think if you're in a good routine of playing every other day, a layoff of more than 2-3 days, you're going to start to get into a bit of a malaise. And obviously, pros shake off the rust. They lock back in. You saw what the Oilers did after effectively half their lineup being out the final 5 regular season games, and the way it took them 2 games to turn it back on against Vegas. And then once they got it on, they got it on. But this is an Oilers team that is veteran laden. There is experience up and down this lineup. There's more than enough playoff experience here to understand how to handle the luxury of an extra day off here or there. And we will turn our attention to the Stars and Jets tonight, I should say, instead of tomorrow. I've done that twice now because I am tired and I keep forgetting it's Thursday morning now because of the way the clock works. But sitting here after that type of win, there isn't anyone in the NHL the Oilers can't beat on any given night. If you can beat Vegas 1-0 in overtime, you can hang with the big boys. You can hang with Dallas. God willing, you can hang with Florida. And look, I know more than one person has said it. I've been thinking it over the last day and a half. I was especially thinking it when I saw the Panthers smoke the Leafs 6-1. It'd be pretty sweet to get our lick back, wouldn't it? It would be pretty sweet to get our lick back against Florida. There's a long way to go to get there. I don't want to disrespect the Dallas Stars, who are even better than they were last year. Mikko Rantanen is having his name in sentences with guys like Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky for the playoff run he's having. So I think any talk about a Stanley Cup final rematch is a bit premature. It's nice to think about. It's, we talk, I keep alluding to this, and shout out Chalamet. I know the Knicks lost, but he was up there in Boston, and at the Golden Globes, he won the Golden Globe for, I think, A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan movie. And he was talking about how he wants to be one of the greats. He wants to be like Marlon Brando. He wants to be like Michael Phelps. He wants to be like Viola Davis. He wants to be like Michael Jordan. And winning a Golden Globe isn't that. It's not telling you you're great, but it's fuel. It's motivation. And winning this game tonight It doesn't tell you you're a great team. It doesn't solidify that. They give the big trophy out, and that tells you who's a great team. The Oilers took another step. They exercised the demon tonight. The way this series went when these two teams met 2 years ago, the Oilers were not ready for that moment yet. They needed to take another step in their evolution. And last year was the proof of concept. Last year was the proof that you could build a team and find the right supporting cast around Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and the cost prohibitions that creates for the rest of your roster and make it happen. You don't get to the Final Four 3 times in a 4-year window without having the foundation right. Oftentimes, going from the foundation being right to everything being right is the hardest hurdle. You think about some of the teams of the last 10 to 15 years, like the Sharks, like the Rangers, the Predators, the Jets, that have lingered around the periphery. They've been to conference finals, they've been to Stanley Cup finals, and they've lost. You think about the Bruins. Think about how many regular season games the Boston Bruins won between the Stanley Cup they won against the Canucks way back in 2011 and this year when they missed the playoffs. Think about all the conference finals. Think about the Stanley Cup finals they went to and lost, and all of the great players who rotated in and out of there. Going from consistent Stanley Cup contender to Stanley Cup champion is the hardest and highest barrier to clear. Think about it as the broad jump. You know, we have to get so far, and our first couple of attempts, we haven't cleared the distance requisite with winning this event. It's not out of the question. It's doable. We have the capacity to do it, but we need to go out there and do it. And we have to understand that just because we do our best, that's not necessarily going to be enough. We're going to play a Stars or a Jets team starting early next week, maybe even as soon as Sunday, depending on how games shake out. And that's a team that's going to want to get there. The Jets have never made it to a Stanley Cup final in this permutation. The Stars went in 2020 with Anton Khudobin as their starting goalie because they were down to a third-string goalie, and they weren't ready for that moment. They were injured. They outlasted a Vegas team that, frankly, I thought was the best team in 2020, but Vegas didn't have the juice left. They were out of gas, and Dallas beat them. Now, if you're Edmonton, you have as powerful a motivation as you can possibly imagine. You are 4 wins away from righting what was a wrong. Righting what was a wrong. And it's not a moral failing to lose. I don't think of it that way in sports. As long as you don't like roll over and die, you don't embarrass yourself. The Oilers have as great an opportunity as anyone could possibly draw up at redemption. And I am at a point where any range of outcome now is on the table. This is a team that can win any type of game. This is a team that's won 1-0 overtime squeakers. This is a team that has won 6-5 overtime thrillers. They have 2 of the 5 best forwards in all of hockey. They have a top 10 defenseman in the sport in Evan Bouchard. Coming into tonight's game, they were the only team in the playoffs that all 4, their 4 most common playoff lines, had a greater than 50% shot share, a 50% high danger chance share, and 50% goal share. This is a lineup that has been creating dangerous offense when it's needed. This is a team that has been creating offensive zone time and working off the cycle when needed. They can play with anyone, and we're going to find out who anyone is over the course of the next few days, maybe even as soon as tonight. For everything you need to know ahead of the Oilers' 3rd trip to the Stanley Cup final in the last 4 years, be sure to subscribe to Locked On Oilers wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave the show a 5-star review. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment. I've been actively replying to every single comment I possibly can. That's not deranged, unhinged, or rude. If you're rude, at least be funny. If you make me laugh being rude to me, I will reply on principle because I respect hating as an art form. Thank you so much to everyone who made Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. To the everydayers, thank you so much. If you're new here and you made it to the end of the episode, thanks for taking the time. I hope you'll subscribe. I hope you'll get in on the journey here, because the Oilers have an opportunity to do something really special. Be sure to check out Locked On NHL and Locked On NHL Game Night on the Locked On NHL feed. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Until then, let's go Oilers.